You know, some places just feel wrong. The deep woods, a dark basement. But there's this one space, one that's part of our own homes but feels totally alien, that holds this special kind of fear. So today, we're climbing that ladder and taking a hard look at why the attic is one of the most powerful and downright terrifying settings in all of horror.
So let's just get right into it. Why? Why are we so scared of the space that's literally right above our heads? It's kind of a paradox, isn't it? The attic is part of the very building that's supposed to keep us safe, but it's this pocket of the unknown, just looming there. We know it's there, but we have no idea what's really going on inside.
You know, the best attic horror stories, they don't start with a monster jumping out. They start by just making the space itself feel off. In one story, the attic is described as simply unconventional. It was a part of the house the family owned, sure, but they all just kind of instinctively stayed away from it.
And that fear gets dialed way up by the layout. That same attic was described as a makeshift maze with all these weird beams and floors that didn't line up. You couldn't get a clear line of sight anywhere. And that disorientation, well, it turns a storage room into a hunting ground, right? It plays on that deep fear of being trapped and not being able to see what's coming for you.
And then, of course, the lights go out. In a place like that, you are plunged into what the narrator calls an absolute impenetrable black. I mean, that's more than just dark. It's like total sensory overload by having no senses at all. You're completely blind, totally helpless, and you just can't shake the feeling that something else in there knows its way around perfectly. But maybe the most terrifying idea of all is that the house itself is hiding something. In another story, we find a diary that's just obsessed with this empty space along an attic wall, space that the writer says couldn't be accounted for. And that right there is the nightmare. The thought that our own homes might have secret rooms, hidden voids that we know nothing about.
So let's talk about 3 really unsettling stories. Because these feelings of dread, they're the bedrock for some truly scary stuff. We're going to dive into 3 viral stories that tap into these exact fears, each one using the attic to show us a different shade of horror. So, story number 1, The Sleepwalker. It kicks off not with a bang, but with this quiet, creepy detail. Waking up with dirty feet. It just implies that the line between your safe bed and that forbidden attic, well, it was crossed while you were totally asleep and vulnerable.
Then we've got our second story, The Black Box, which is all about psychological terror. The narrator finds this frantic diary up in the attic, and it's this record of a forgotten madness. A madness that feels like it's baked right into the walls of the house, and honestly feels kind of contagious.
And the third one, The Smoker, man, it just nails a classic trope. You're in the backyard, you're safe, you look up, and you see a flicker of movement in the attic window. Just like that, your home is transformed. The attic isn't a storage room anymore, it's an observation deck, and something is looking out.
Okay, so now we're at the house as the monster. And here's the really crucial part. The horror never, ever stays in the attic. It's like a poison that just seeps through the ceiling. You hear weird sounds from above. Strange things start showing up downstairs. Once that attic is compromised, no room in the house feels safe anymore. The whole house becomes the monster.
And as you look at these stories, you start to see they all use a common blueprint for fear. You've got the maze-like layout, right? The hidden space, that creepy window we talked about. And think about what we put in attics. Forgotten things, stuff we don't want anymore. And this is a big one. The only way in or out is usually this flimsy pull-down ladder. It's a perfect bottleneck. You're vulnerable going up, and you're even more terrified coming down.
And this is where it gets really deep, because the attic isn't just a physical room, is it? It's a metaphor for our own subconscious mind. It's the storage unit where we stuff all the boxes of repressed memories, old fears and anxieties we really don't want to deal with. The real horror in these stories is the terror of having that mental space broken into, of having those boxes ripped open without your permission.
Which brings us to the anatomy of dread. What makes these stories so chilling isn't just the spooky setting, it's the structure. They all follow this remarkably similar 5-step formula. It's like a blueprint designed to slowly, methodically build up that psychological terror, leaving you with a chill that sticks with you long after you're done reading.
So here's how it works. First, you get a subtle anomaly, something you could almost brush off. Dirty feet, right? Then the evidence escalates. It becomes impossible to ignore. That forces a direct, terrifying confrontation. But then, and this is the most important step,
dismissal. The narrator is told they're overreacting, that there's a perfectly logical explanation. And finally, the mystery is left wide open. It's never solved. The fear just gets to fester.
Yeah, that step, the dismissal, it's absolutely crucial. In all three of our stories, the narrator tells someone in authority, parents, the police, and they're just brushed aside. And that's like a second violation, right? Not only has their home been invaded, but now their own sanity, their perception of reality is being questioned. It leaves them completely and totally alone with their fear.
In this quote from the first story, just says it all. The narrator realizes his parents' dismissal isn't really about logic. It's a defense mechanism. They don't want to believe him because the alternative is just too terrifying to even think about, which, of course, just makes his fear feel even more real.
This table really lays out that central conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got a simple, rational explanation for everything that happened. But on the other, for every single explanation, there's this little detail that doesn't quite add up, a nagging doubt that's based on what the narrator knows they experienced. The real horror lives in that gap, the space between what's logical and what feels terrifyingly true.
And that brings us to our final section, what lingers in the dark. So when you boil it all down, the real genius of these stories, the reason they get so deep under our skin, is that they understand that the scariest monster isn't the one you see, it's the one you don't. The real terror is in the not knowing.
I mean, think about it. If a story gives you a clear answer, it was a ghost, or it was a creature, it kind of lets you off the hook. The story's over. But ambiguity? That's different. The chilling possibility that it could have been anything up there is so much scarier than one specific thing. That fear doesn't just end, it follows you home. Because you're no longer afraid of a monster, you're afraid of the unknown itself.
And this final line from the narrator of The Black Box just says it all, doesn't it? The horror becomes a permanent part of who he is because the mystery can never be solved. It's not just a bad memory that fades, it's a question that's going to haunt him for the rest of his life. And that is the true power of great attic horror. Which really only leaves us with one final thought. That little hatch in your ceiling, it doesn't just lead to a bunch of old boxes. It leads to the subconscious of your home, a place full of forgotten things and corners you can't account for. And after all this, can you ever be 100% sure what's been left up there, just waiting in the dark?